Okay, welcome. So this is my first State of the College address. So I'm very grateful that all of you decided to show up and listen to us share a few of the things that are going on across the college and what things look like going forward. For those of you who don't know, my name is Andrew Lean. I'm the dean here since January. And I'm going to be joined by Associate Dean Joe Constant, Ellen Longmire, and Paul Strakowski to cover some of the other aspects of what's going on in the college. Um, this is kind of sort of an overview of what we're going to go through here today. I'm going to go a little bit over, some of the things that I've seen and worked on from my perspective first. And then Joe's going to say a little bit about what's been going on in the research domain. Paul's going to talk a little about what's going on in the undergraduate programs domain. And Ellen's going to talk a little about what's going on in the academic affairs domain. And in many of these, you might see some overlap, and that is actually a good thing. That means we're sort of talking with each other. And then we'll have a little bit of a, where we go from here, a wrap up, and do some Q&A. So starting off, since the last time I've talked with many of you, I've sort of continued the role that I had when I first got here, which was just a lot of listening and learning, finding out what's going on, talking to people. And through that, I've learned a lot about the different successes that we could claim over the past year in research and in education, as well as some of the challenges we face. And as I'll point out in a little bit, challenge is just really another word for opportunity. If you're able to solve the challenges, there's opportunity that lies on the other side. And then, talk a little bit about at the end, as well at the end of this section, as well as the end of the overall presentation, looking forward to some of the efforts that we have underway. So in terms of the listening and learning, many of you I have seen at individual departmental coffee events. Started off meeting one-on-one with the heads, and then I was meeting in groups with the faculty. Next spring, we're going to start off meeting with the staff. Also been meeting with the undergraduate students in groups. Been doing faculty student lab tours. Had a great visit today with Sarah Swisher and Tony Lowe. It was pretty cool. Lots of visits with industry and alums across the country. Earlier this week, I was out with the CTO at General Mills, with our colleagues from Ag, seeing how we can collaborate, coordinate, and bring value to them, and they can bring value to us. And throughout a lot of this discussion, one of the things that I've realized is there's lots of really good things going on here in CSE. There are many successes to celebrate, and that's one of the things we are doing a lot of, and we're going to be intentional about sort of celebrating our successes and being. Rhonda, well, you may have seen some of the things that we've started to put out. Don't mean to brag, but we're really good. Right? And here's some things we're doing that are really good. These are just vignettes. Please do not feel offended if your name and your face did not show up on here. There's only an hour. But I wanted to highlight a few things. The research effort's very strong. An example here that I really like, Hubert Lim, collaboration between engineering and medicine. They had a $21 million grant from NIH, and this grant, it's very innovative. It's somewhat translational, looking to see if you can use a particular part of the nervous system, the vagus nerve, and by stimulating it appropriately, affect many different type of physiological aspects of the body. And what is really interesting is it comes from NIH's Center for Complementary and Integrative Health, which is a little bit more holistic. So this is a start of sort of like a whole person health investigation by our colleagues in medicine and in science and engineering versus just looking at an individual cell. Now we're starting to look sort of whole body, which is very, very exciting. And I think the team here at Minnesota is sort of one of the leaders in this space. Other successes that we can point to in the research space, we had two separate grants from DOE for their EFRC's program. We're only one of like 2 or 3 schools, I think, that had more than one. Many of our aspirational peers, I would say, probably fell short of us in this respect because they were not able to achieve 2 like we did. Each are over 10 million bucks, and they're both investments in clean energy and how do we get to net zero by 2050. So Paul Downhar, who is up here for those of you who don't know, is leading the Programmable Catalysis Center. And Emmanuel is leading a way that we can do mineralization when we go ahead and store CO2 in underground caverns, so we don't store it under pressurized gas. If we can mineralize it, you can get a lot more stuff in there per unit volume. Very, very exciting. Now, the dollars that I mentioned before, and those are really an input to the research process. What I'm really proud of is some of the outputs, right? And the outputs, when you take these input funds and combine them with the talent that we have here, we develop seriously high impact as an output. And this also includes the philanthropic dollars that come in. And very proud and very happy that we're able to celebrate this past October, an event where we recognized 3 members of the National Academy that we were not able to do during COVID. There's 2 of them here, Larry and Graham. Larry's from chemistry, Graham's from aero. Both of them developed ideas that really made a difference. I can honestly say, without taking too much time here, if it wasn't for Graham, we wouldn't be able to fly as fast as we'd like to do. He has the computational tools to develop those that basically enable the kind of flight that we'd like to have at Mach 5 and beyond. This was important enough. I was very happy that Provost Croson was able to come and join us for that, because she also thought it was something to celebrate. It's not just the research, not just the faculty. We can also celebrate the success of our undergrads. Right? The demand is strong. One of the things that I've learned as I've gone around, you talk to people in industry, you're hosting them for football, blah, 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 you're being social. Hey, my name is such and such. Hey, I'm Andrew. Like, the second thing they say after their name and where they're from and their position is, we need more engineers, or we need more scientists. It's a pattern that's repeated itself over almost the entire year. The career fair had over 250 employers that visited, and thanks very much to the Student Services and the Career Services for putting that on. Our students have a wide range of career opportunities, and very happy to see that we actually now have a centralized co-op program that allows us to have the students explore those even more. 95% of our students have career placements upon graduation, not like 6 months after, like upon graduation. We are at, that's almost like the very limit of what you could have as far as placement. That's phenomenal. Every additional student we could train, they would get placed, which is great. Additionally, one of the things that we're very proud of is we have our most diverse incoming class, like ever. Paul's going to talk about that a little bit. The number of African-American students, percentage-wise, has changed a certain amount, but like numerically, it's almost like tripled. That's good. Don't mean to brag, but that's really good. The efforts that the Student Services have put in on that is tremendous. And not just on the recruiting, but on advising and other types of student support. Mental health, we know it's a challenge right now. They've done yo person's work, and the college has supported them in doing that. Another success point that we could talk to is student programs. We won the American Solar Challenge in the 4-person category, the 4-seater category. This is great. Our solar vehicle team, it's a wonderful program. It sets the students up for lifelong success, working in teams, meeting deadlines, sponsorship, getting sponsors to help support that. They're learning a ton. And what most people don't know is this is not a recent thing. This is the 14th car that they built. Right? They started back in the 1990s. They started when some of us were still in grad school. Okay, just to put that in context. We have nearly 75 students that participate. Right? This is a force that, I'm very proud definitely we want to go ahead and celebrate that. On our graduate programs too, it's not just our student undergraduate programs or the curriculum for the undergrads, the grad programs. We'll hear a little bit about this as well too from Ellen. You know, our new MS program in data science for chemical engineering, material science, that is going great. I'm hearing good things about sponsorships coming in to create fellowships to help pay for people to, I mean, people are actually willing, companies and individuals, to pay to have students come and join this master's program because it's so popular with our potential employees. That's something to really celebrate. And we're the first in the country that I know of that has something like this. That said, there are some challenges that I've noticed. There's lots of good stuff going on. The biggest challenge that I see is size. Right? We could be bigger. 95% placement, right? If somehow we're able to increase our number of our students by 10, 15, 20%, they would all still find jobs, right? It's not like we're producing a product that is not wanted. If we go ahead and increase the student size, we can't do that without the faculty and staff to enable that, right? If we have more bodies, we're kind of going to need more space. We need to house that growth somewhere. Those are the challenges that I see in terms of just footprint and size. And you know, visibility is also a challenge. We really need to make sure that we are able to tell the good things that are going on here in a manner that disseminates outside of our academic circles, you know, writ broadly across the country. I put up there one of my favorite quotes. If you're a Lewis Carroll fan, you know, it takes all we can to basically stay in one place. If you want to make any progress, you're going to actually have to run twice as fast, pretty much. We're running fast. The thing is, the rest of the world is also running fast. So we're actually going to have to do things a little bit differently if we're going to make progress. In all of these challenges, right, these are really opportunities. If we're able to go ahead and meet some of these challenges, I think they're great things that await us on the other side. As far as looking forward, how we started to look at meeting some of these challenges, there's lots of efforts underway to build on our strengths and really try and set a course for the future. For the first time that in recent memory, you know, out of some of the challenges that were developed, there were 4 working groups that were stood up. Call them college leadership task forces, a combination of faculty and staff, and in some cases, alumni and industry, to take a look at some of the key challenges and figure out concrete plans and how to turn them into opportunities. And some of those are already being deployed. Visibility, we have at least 2 task forces that we put. One of them was one of these, but we also had an external, outside the university task force put together to try and see how we would address visibility. Not just visibility by our academic peers, but visibility by people outside of the academy. Right? So they know about us across the country. Another thing that we've done is really lean into this intersections program. Lean into this science and engineering. Make it our differentiator. We can do things here because of sciences interacting with engineering on the research side that not many other places can. I talked about Sarah Swisher. I went to go visit her lab. She explicitly said the ideas that they've developed in terms of their patch that can monitor the health of somebody when they're brought into a trauma unit, they couldn't do that if it wasn't chemists and electrical engineers working together with medical people as well too. You're not going to get that on that many campuses. We have to tell this story really, really loudly, I believe. And speaking of medicine, we've also started to expand our existing relationships with medicine. IEM and BMDC, John's here. We're doubling down on or continue to evolve with them, as well as some new efforts that we have underway in terms of coupling information data on the health side. Looking forward, you know, the Lindholm Renovation is complete. I went through there. You can see some of the very nice spaces. Saif did an awesome job on the design of the ISYU space. Man, that's really nice. A very nice space for computer science and their teaching. area. I would be remiss if I didn't recognize Moss, who was really a driving force behind that, the funding for this Lindholm renovation. So I know he's here somewhere. There he is. Thank you very much for all the effort that you did to make this a reality. It's beautiful. And we have more capital projects to come. Fingers crossed, FiveYear is going to be next, and it'll be very soon. Fingers crossed. I know it's been a long road. Shepherd as well, though. We're going to be doing renovations to Shepherd, trying to expand the footprint for my friend back there in the back, Motts, and others to come. So the infrastructure is coming. Ellen's going to talk a little bit more about this, some of the other things that we're doing looking forward. The Dean's Fellow program, we have a couple people identified. Ellen talked about Victor Barukas, who is doing a lot of faculty development efforts. But also Edgar Arriaga has volunteered to step up and do some, be a Dean's Fellow starting in January, looking at one of the outputs of one of the task forces on inclusivity writ large across the entire CSE enterprise. The other thing, we're going to hire 60 new faculty in the next 3 years. That's the plan. The plan is actually to hire at least 60. We didn't put the exact number there because it's easy to divide 60 by 3. People can just get a sense of that. But at least 60. And one of the things I'm really super happy about, hopefully all of you will show up next week for the Staff Outstanding Service Award. We have to go ahead and recognize our staff. They are key to what we do. Without them, trust me, none of this would work. And so the college has decided to go ahead and recognize them. Hopefully you all will show up, the faculty, and recognize your colleagues as well too, who are integral to this being successful. Other things that are going on at the college, we've invested a little bit more in student services. Can talk to you about this if you wish, but just realizing in some of the capability that we have to sort of build and potentially prepare for growth. We do have a permanent director of corporate relations, Brett Schreiner. He is actually going to be working a lot with Joe, so to see how we can increase our interactions and engagements with industry. And we're getting close on the assistant dean for advancement. The search is ongoing. We've looked at about 60% of the candidates that we were going to bring on campus. There's a couple more, and then we hope to move to decision stages. That was pretty quick through, just trying to keep us to time. So now I'm going to turn it over to Professor Joe Constant, who's the Associate Dean for Research. Joe?
Thank you so much. And I'm just going to give you a few highlights. I want to start with numbers because everyone always asks, and we'll head that off. Talk a little bit about national trends and a little bit about what we're doing here in the college. Numbers, the big positive news is research is up. Research is up measured by dollars. If you're measuring the dollars that we actually spent. If you're looking at proposals, there is a long-term trend, and it is continuing that as a college and largely our peers are submitting fewer proposals and asking for more money. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. If you look just in the past fiscal year, it looks like we're down a tiny bit. That's somewhat an artifact. We know that some of the things that came out of certain federal agencies, including the National Science Foundation, didn't hit very well in our fiscal year, and some money came in later in the year. So we see this is pretty much in the same rough percentage of it's probably going to be over a multi-year pattern, a small increase, but not a very large difference one way or the other. Technology transfer, we're continuing to do amazing things, identifying inventions, filing for patents, issuing them, getting licenses for technologies, both patented technologies and other technologies and data sets and other things that we create in the college. And one of the more exciting things is the startup companies that launch. The ones that are listed here that are tracking officially ones that are the university-owned technology, typically things done in faculty research labs. There's a whole set of things that are not tracked centrally that are the technology innovations and the startups that come out of our students from their own training and their own exciting innovation. And we continue to work really closely as part of a regional hub to train our graduate students, our undergraduates, as well as our postdocs and our faculty who want to learn more about entrepreneurship and innovation on how to bring new ideas to market, because we realize that's one of the many ways in which we can have a significant impact. If you look nationally, this shift towards fewer larger grants is not a coincidence. It's an intentional strategy. And it's an intentional strategy that aligns with the idea that we're hearing from the White House and frankly from all of the agencies that then report to the White House about realizing the benefits of the foundational research that's been funded. And so a chunk of the money that's coming out, more than ever before, is being directed towards, let's take what's been done and go the next step. How do we go from the scientific discovery or the engineering innovation to the translation towards practice, towards the creation of an industry, towards the training of a workforce, and towards the kind of economic development that our nation has seen decades upon decades of history that research drives economic development. And now there's this targeted strategy going in this direction. That means more people working together in teams. That means teams that are often inherently interdisciplinary, that often bring together people who are not just the scientists, the engineers, the mathematicians, but also people who are specialists in workforce training and development and regulation and other areas to try to create comprehensive teams that can take on much bigger amounts of money for large impact. We're also seeing certain key national themes. None of these would surprise anyone. Climate change and sustainability, and that's an area that you've already heard about some examples, and we have many other large grants that have come in the past year looking at the whole issue of resources and how you consider things environmentally and cyclically, and how do we remediate the harm that's been done where we can. Health. There's a huge amount of interest suddenly in pandemic prevention. I'm not sure where that came from. Actually, I am sure where that came from. But there's renewed and continuing interest in cancer prevention and treatment, and those are two of the clear health priorities coming out. Those are not the only health priorities, but those are the ones that show up at the top of the White House list. Security and technological competitiveness. Security across the board, technological competitiveness. I think most of you are quite familiar with the CHIPS Plus Science Act that is saying, hey, wait a minute, if all of our semiconductors need to be made overseas, we're vulnerable. And what happens when an ally that was making them for us is no longer an ally? And we're seeing more interest in security, not just as how do we protect against hacks and attacks, but how do we develop a supply chain that is robust? How do we develop the capabilities to do things that we always knew how to do before, but we turned over in the interest of economic efficiency, and in a few cases we're going to pull them back in the interest of security. And a huge national theme is around innovation for equity. We're no longer seeing a day where it's acceptable to think about, oh yes, and on the bottom of page 15, here's my plan for broader impact and diversity and equity. I'll bring a couple of students into my lab who don't look like me. We're looking at integrated impact as you start by picking the problems and picking the cases and the collaborators that allow making change that actually distributes the change across all sectors of society. These priorities are not new: diversity, equity, and inclusion. Open research. This is growing, the insistence on making your data public. Big thing coming out of NIH, but similar things coming out of NSF and elsewhere. Shared infrastructure and the willingness to invest more, but the expectation that it has to show significant and shared use. And I mentioned workforce and domestic industry. Let me wrap up with what the college has been doing in this space. We would start with the intersections seed grants. The idea that one of our strengths is that we're all together under this roof. and that we can bring together the physical sciences, the mathematical and computing sciences, and the engineering disciplines, led us to award 2 grants earlier this year. You heard about one with the patches. Another one is involved in dealing with all of the networking and computation issues around remote control of autonomous and semi-autonomous vehicles. Because not all solutions are about full autonomy. Sometimes you need a human, but the human doesn't have to be there. None of that works if the data doesn't get to the right place at the right time. We will have a new competition that you'll hear an announcement of fairly soon for spring 2023, and our goal remains the same. We want to bring together teams that were not working together before or not working together for long to take on problems that are fundamentally rooted in different disciplines across that divide. Supporting large grant initiatives, we have a wonderful team working on an NSF Regional Innovation Engine proposal. There's many people working around the CHIPS and Science Act and some of the semiconductor research consortia that are out there, and the training consortia, data science and health. We're also staffing up in this area. We've reorganized. We're taking advantage of our partnership with corporate and foundation relations and the corporate engagement center. They will be hiring an additional person that's looking at science and engineering and its intersection with medicine and health. We also have a position posted for a director of external strategic sponsored research activities who's going to be there. We're looking to recruit out of industry to help people work more in the larger efforts that require partnerships, particularly partnerships with the industrial sector. We are working with our new Vice President for Research, Shashank Priya. He has some bold ideas. He's announced, and many of you have probably seen, an International Institute on Biosensing. He is developing plans for a set of university-wide strategic research direction workshops coming up to look forward towards 2030, and we're working closely in partnership with him. We are continuing to work on enhancing research facilities and infrastructure with the extra strength that part of that CHIPS Plus Science Act has been more money to allow these things to reach out to more universities, and we're making sure we get our best efforts into those competitions. And coming up next is what I like to call our 999 strategic priorities. This college deserves at least 9 ideas that broadly engage at least 9 of our faculty across different units that are big enough to warrant 9-figure investments over a 10-year period or so. And that sounds like a lot of money. And I will tell you, I don't have it here. But if we don't organize around big ideas, we're not ready when the opportunities arise. And we need to recognize we're doing this. If you look at the amount of money that we're already out there pursuing and getting in sustainability of materials and energy, we're doing this. If you look at some of the things that we're doing in bioengineering, in looking at cancer, in looking at some of the areas around neurotechnologies, these are all things that if we bring them together, we have some pretty large ideas, and it's not just those. And so this is going to be a call coming out for ideas. Let's help us bring them together so that we can be ready with our own ideas and then integrate them into the university's main ideas. So that's where I'm going to end, and I'm going to turn this over to Paul.
Hello, everyone. And let's see here. Here we go. I want to be data heavy. If you know me, that's sort of my style. I want to talk about our undergraduate programs, and with 5,600 undergraduates, there's a lot of data that you can draw. Really, when I want to do those, I want to look at certainly in the new student characteristics, but also point out some key things I am seeing. The world is changing very quickly. And so I'm going to look a lot at the last 5 years. I sort of wanted to go enough ahead of COVID and as far past COVID as I can get, which is right now, and look at really 5-year trends. And they are quite, they're fascinating. They're going to lead to some challenges, but I'm with Andrew. They're really opportunities for us, and I'm excited to share those with you. Balancing enrollment across our majors, but also dealing with the fact that we have student interest, which is changing out of high schools all the time. Our student population is growing more diverse every day, as I'll show you. So I want to begin with give some demographics. These are the demographic data from our students. These are all self-identified, so students who identify as female students, women in this case. We've been a long trend of increasing from the mid-teens in this college to about 30, 32. In the last couple, 2-3 years, it's sort of reached a steady state around 30. It's a little frustrating, but it actually makes some good sense. If you think of the undergraduate enrollment in the physical sciences and mathematics, it's about 33% female. Engineering is about 30%. And in computer science, it's about 19. And computer science is both our largest major and our most rapidly growing major. So this is something it's reality, and we have to think about it. It's important to note that. I'm looking at, this is also BIPOC population. This is domestic. So these are only students that are non-international students. There's some really exciting numbers here, actually. As you can see here, we've gone from, this is just in a 5-year period, from 19% to 34% of our students are identified as BIPOC in the same period of time. In fact, since 2019, our enrollment of students who identify as white has dropped from 65% to 55%. So I suspect we will start to see that approaching 50% quite soon. As Andrew pointed out, our Black population is going out. No, just to note, I'll have it on the next slide. From 2017 to 2022, we've increased the undergraduate freshman class by about 25%. So the percentages are going to be amplified in terms of raw numbers as well. So you can see here our Black population. It didn't hurt that our dean was kind enough to hand call students this year, the beginning of really an effort on our part to target and try to increase yield rates of our students. As you can see here, another interesting factor, you can certainly see our Asian population is exploding. And actually, that is often in the I put this in brackets because I don't really like to use it anymore. I looked, since 2019, we've really dug a lot deeper into more nuanced aspects of students' self-identification from an ethnic background. And actually, of this population, almost all of the growth in our Asian student population, 9 percentage points, is in Hmong students. In fact, of all of our Asian students, the biggest decrease is students, again, these are domestic students, who identify as Asian but Chinese. So the 3 biggest areas have been Hmong, is by far the largest. Second actually was Pakistan, which might be associated with the turmoil. Again, small though, but most of this change has been our students from the Hmong population. Very, very strong students. And as you'll see, their graduation, our BIPOC student graduation rate is higher than white and higher than international. It's close to 5-year, 91% for this particular group of students. I also want to talk about where the students come from. This brings up some points that we have to be aware of here. We are, whoa, what was that? Wrong button, that's what that was, Paul. Minnesota population. We were for a while there decreasing our students from the state of Minnesota because our national visibility was climbing quite strongly. Of late, we are starting to find that we need more Minnesota students to fill our class. It's becoming much more competitive nationally. Remember, this is bridging the aberration of, I call the aberration of COVID, but we need to work harder, I think, at trying to attract students from outside our region. This is very important. Just to give you a sense for it, for every student we admit from Minnesota, the yield rate's about 50%, so about half of them show up in the fall, matriculate. For our national population, rather, this is outside the reciprocity region. We only yield about 7%. So we're working aggressively really with Assistant Dean Mark Shervin to focus on yield this year. We're working with each of your departments, both faculty, most of your DUGs, as well as staff, to really work very hard at yielding bigger numbers. There's a task force that Andrew put together this year to look at growth on the undergraduate side and the graduate side. But on the undergraduate side, the goal, I think, is realistic. It's going to be a challenge, but an opportunity to grow the undergraduate population by 50% in 5 years. That's going to mean an increase of about 8% per year, each year. I think it's aggressive, but it can be done, but it's not going to be done without all of us on board working hard to yield these students. If we can increase the yield by 1% or 2% nationally, we can make a huge difference here and have a footprint more broad than the upper Midwest. And so the other problem is Minnesota numbers are certainly high, but we're reaching the end of the pool in the state of Minnesota. There aren't that many more students who we consider ready for the rigor of this college in the state of Minnesota right now. That's decreasing. So if we don't reach out beyond our borders, we're going to have a difficult time of achieving that growth. International population has been up a bit. We had a pretty strong melt again. This international students were admitted. They said they were coming and they didn't make it. The provost and president would like to shoot for a university level of about 10% international in the next 5 years, perhaps. We're going to have to do a bit heavier lift than the average college here, maybe 12 to 15%. And we actually expected about 12% of our freshman class to be international this year. And the melt was a little bit higher than we anticipated. I want to talk about some success here. So some things to note, again, opportunities. You'll see here, from 2017 to 2022, we increased the freshman class by 22%. However, there's been a national drop-off in number of students that transfer in. Our two-year colleges are being depleted nationally. That's a trend that we are addressing at the central level. I don't want to get too much detail. The net result of that is that while we've been trying to grow the freshman class for a while, this is under Moss's leadership, and prior to Moss, Steve Crouch, and with Andrew, growing the freshman class is not getting it done because we're losing students through because we're not bringing in the transfers. The returning numbers are more or less flat. The college overall growth is flat, and this is partly a result of our success. So if I go back 10 years ago, maybe 1% of our students graduated in 3 years. Now it's 10% of our students are graduating in 3 years. You can see here, our 4- and 5-year grad rates exploded. In fact, I'll show you in a curve to follow. I mean, these are big numbers. If you thought about having 90% of CSE students graduate in 5 years, is pretty remarkable. And actually, I was talking to Angie, who directs our Career Center, even students who are taking co-op programs actually graduate as rapidly now as our students who are not participating in co-op programs. So that's exciting news for sure. Degrees awarded, and then this is going to focus a bit about the balance in the college. So as you can see here, these actually, the numbers on the far right here are the 5-year change in degrees awarded. And for the engineering, we only have Bachelor's of Science degrees. For the computer science and the physical science and math, BAs and BSs. For those programs, I've included the BAs and the BSs. The 5-year trend, and it's a strong one, computer science is up 56% in 5 years. Engineering is down 11% in that same period of time, been actually quite flat for some time, and physical sciences and math is down 27%. Now, of course, this is the entire college integrated over the 4 or 5 years we're bringing students in. So I wanted to look at what that looks like for the incoming freshman class. So this is sort of, as you can see, this is where we're getting our students from, the freshman class. At least right now, we're not being helped much by the transfer population. This is the percentage of, remember, the freshman class grew from about 25% or so from 2017 to 2022. Percent interested in the physical sciences and mathematics has been relatively flat. This is within the noise. Computer science has grown by 17 percentage points. Engineering interest has decreased by about the same amount. And the challenge that I have, and I was just talking again to Angie, we can't graduate enough electrical engineers right now and civil engineers. We have companies that want those students and they can't find them. And this is not just true in those majors as well. So we have to talk as a college, and Matza and I have spent way too many hours occasionally with a beer in hand trying to solve this problem, dealing with the challenges of a very outstanding interested pool in computer science. At the same token, trying to bring in students, yes, into computer science. Understand computer science also has limitations, and I think you're reaching your edge of capacity and getting more students interested in the engineering. And that's why we need, and I'll talk about it shortly, and I guess my time's going to be running up here, so I can't. Shortly is coming up now. So let's talk about it now. Recruiting, impact. So we have worked, Mark and I are working very hard with Andrew's help to address yielding, how we yield students. This is going to be very important. So last year, we had about 7,500 students admitted to this college, 7,500. We yielded about 1,400. We have to work harder in the yield space. And we need your help, and we have members from each of your programs to have to help us articulate what is exciting about your degrees. with a population which will be close to 50% minority, which will then become majority of our population, underrepresented, not underrepresented any longer. We need to help these young people understand how they can impact the world, how they can change and improve the human condition. And we have to make that story, and we have to reach out, and we're doing it actually aggressively through marketing and other tools to yield better our students and to try to craft our class. If the Supreme Court makes some changes which don't help us in affirmative action, we're going to have to even double down harder to recruit those students, because students are interested in us. They've applied to the college, they've been admitted to the college, and we need to bring them in. This is very, very important, and we need all of your help to get that done. Andrew had mentioned collegiate investment in student services. This has been very, very helpful for us. We actually invested to be able to get our advising caseloads lower so we can meet with more students. There's demand from our employers, so more employee engagement. We actually are hiring someone just to focus on recruiting and outreach for our students and to work more closely with the admissions office on that front. We've also invested in the Anderson Labs. It's a great opportunity. Things were a little quiet in the Anderson Innovation Labs during COVID. They're coming out quite nicely. We want to get more departments offering courses that use prototyping and use design thinking. We have our new 3M chair in experiential learning just walked in the door. David Orzer, you must have been at a senior design event. Of course you were. Students come first, and I respect that. So anyway, in the Anderson Labs, and I know mechanical, electrical, biomedical. There's a number of programs. Physics has courses that are now using 3D printing, prototyping, but also the design thinking. It doesn't have to be a physical item, right? It can be just creative thinking about new problems, software solutions, and things of that nature. So on that, we are certainly grateful for the support that we're getting. We have great students, great opportunities. But to move ahead and to grow, in which we need the growth in all of our majors, yes, Mats, not just computer science and engineering, but all of our majors, and we're gonna get that done. So thank you. On that, we'll turn things over to Ellen. There you go. Be careful. I can't see it.
Thanks, Paul. I'm just going to say a few things about our faculty and faculty recruiting, and also about our grad program. So I'm starting off not showing you anything quantitative here. I'm just showing you a lot of pictures of all of the faculty that have joined since January 2022. You can see, I think they represent 10 different departments, 17 new faculty, and I think I've had the pleasure of meeting nearly all of them, and there's really a lot of talent and energy and excitement that these people are bringing to CSE.
You were warned, Ellen.
I was. Okay, just can't hit it too hard. I wanted to talk about faculty hiring for a minute, just to make sure that everyone in CSE is informed about this, and specifically what we've started this year that is new is we're looking at faculty hiring on a 3-year horizon rather than a 1-year horizon, so that departments can be more strategic in their planning, and this should also give the departments greater flexibility in terms of areas across which they might hire, for example. And in addition to setting up these plans for all of our departments, something else that is new this year is there are a set of what I have written here called open positions across CSE aimed at increasing the diversity of our faculty. So this year there are 4 open positions beyond these plans within the departments, and we hope all the departments will compete for these positions so we can make some outstanding hires. And what I guess I have at the second bullet is right now we're forecasting 21.5 strategic hires that departments are searching for, as well as these 4 open positions. The years are similar across the next 2 years, and you've seen this marketing about 60 new faculty over the next 3 years. Really, if we make all those hires, it's more like 74, 75, if we can really take advantage. And just one other point that I don't think I stated is this is not saying that our faculty is going to increase by 60, but rather we're planning for normal attrition through retirement, occasionally faculty leaving, in making these plans. So something else about faculty, which is new this year, and we really wanted to get started in the wake of COVID and the idea that so many of our activities were remote for a couple of years. And this activity is being spearheaded by Victor Barocas, who's one of the Dean's Faculty Fellows this year. And I'm working with him on it, and it's really a lot of fun. What we're trying to do is set up a series of regular meetings of our early career faculty. And the whole idea behind this is to increase their success. And there are really two motivators. One is introducing newer faculty to different strategies and facilities available across our college at different meetings, some of which I've listed here. And the other is really to improve networking possibilities and build a cohort of these newer faculty so they get to know one another and begin to collaborate. And collaborate not only in research, but also in sort of strategy for success, like, oh, this happened to me today. Has this ever happened to you? And what did you do about it? I think it's really valuable. So now I'll switch a little to our grad programs, and I'm showing you one chart here, and it only goes to 2021 because I don't have all the specific numbers yet for this year, and that's what the text is on the left. So what you see on that chart is in 2020 we had this dip which was associated with COVID. We had a lot of students that were admitted but could not join, and so you see these little kinks in the graphs, which rose again starting in 2021. Our numbers this year, at least in total, we're flat compared to last year, which in at least one study that has come out, it seems we're doing a little better than the national trend. Our number of international students is up slightly, where the total percentage of international students right now is 46%, and number of women and our BIPOC enrollments, those are relatively flat compared to last year. Women 29%, BIPOC self-identified as 7%. This is just a few words. New this year, I will say something about BS/MS 4+1 programs, which already exist in a number of our departments. But what is new is, after many years of asking, the provost has agreed that some credits in these programs could be counted toward both degrees, up to 9 credits. And what we think is that makes it a lot easier for some of our high-performing students, high-performing undergrads, to really complete both the bachelor's and the master's within 5 years. And so I know that some of our programs are really looking at how to incorporate this. And what I think is it's going to increase the number of students in master's programs, or at least it allows for that possibility. The second bullet Andrew mentioned, we also have, starting already this fall, this really a BS/MS program, BS in Chemical Engineering and Material Science, but then an add-on MS with this data science focus, and that has kicked off, and I have heard it's doing very well. So that's all I have to say, and I'm going to hand it back to Andrew.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ellen. My favorite part about Ellen's presentation is I showed up there under the new faculty category. I used to think of myself as a new guy, but you know, when it starts to get gray, you don't get that anymore. But there I was. Just one slide that we have here, and what I want to leave you with, what we want to leave you with, really, is there's a lot of initiatives that we have going forward. That's the first thing. You remember the Red Queen, right? We're not going to sort of stand still. We're going to run twice as fast. Another thing that I want to leave you with is we're not afraid to try new things and learn from them. Right? Sometimes there is the idea that, you know, what if I try this and it doesn't work? You know, you can't live life thinking that everything I'm going to try is going to be 100%. Then you're not really pushing the envelope. Some of the things that we're going to try, they may be considered learning experiences, and that's okay. Okay. In that, we will say that things are very good coming in. You know, fiscally, we're very stable. But there's that opportunity to head in an even better direction. And that's the direction I'm talking about here. I think that the college, as I see it now, as I see all these groups starting to come together and be energized about, okay, let's try this, let's try that. Very excited, you know, projecting, you know, 6, 7, 8 years down the line what this place is going to look like. But it's going to take all of us. And that's the message I would leave you with. We're heading in a really good direction, but it's going to take all of us to actually capitalize on those opportunities. It can't just be the department chair's job or the dean's job or the, you know, the whatever, right? You're part of this household as well too. You got to pitch in, do the dishes when, you know. For those of you who are parents, you get that one. No, it's going to take all of us. But when we do, oh my God, this is going to be an awesome. Everybody's going to want to be here. So I will wrap up by saying we're going to have some Q&A, but we're also going to have the opportunity for a reception outside, a little food and drink where we can continue that. So with that, I will entertain question and answer from the audience or from online, and we'll share the mic with my colleagues depending on where the question comes from. So thank you very much for your time. And we'll, oh, no. Questions from the audience or online, Rhonda? There's one. You want to start with that one?
So the question is about the hiring 60 faculty over the next 3 years. How that works, I know Ellen did address a little bit that would include those that are retiring, but are there any new net? Is there any additional that is going to be added?
So the question is, what's our net growth? We talk about the hiring 60 faculty in 3 years. What does that net us now? Right now I think it's like 420, 425 ballpark. We can't control growth, right? We can control what we hire, and then we can work really hard on, it's like a mass balance. There's stuff that comes in, right? And then there's stuff that goes out. Historically, sorry not to get into numbers, we tend to track between 3 and 5% in terms of our turnover, okay? If you stick to the 3%, which is the low end, and this is where I'm talking about it's going to take all of us, right? If we stick to that 3%, there's a 7% growth in our total faculty. We net grow by 7%. If we end up on the high end, at the 5% turnover, which I hope we don't, then it's like 0.8%. We basically tread water. Right? So sort of like a Hippocratic, you know, there will be no harm or no shrinkage done to the net faculty with this plan. If we're really good, and I think we are, and we all work together to make sure all our colleagues know, you know, we value them and try and retain them here, it's a 7% growth. Hopefully that answers the question. I've prepared that one because I get it a lot. Now, if we do the 74, ooh, I mean, you can actually then go ahead and extrapolate. And it'll be even more than, I mean, we're getting close to like 10%. Sorry. Yes.
So I have a question about, faculty retention recruitment. So you brought it up as part of the context for your answer. I'm a little worried about this thing that we keep mysteriously hearing about from central administration called peak. Because peak sounds like it's going to increase both staff and faculty workloads, which will definitely then impact recruitment and retention. So what is the college doing to shield faculty workloads from becoming untenable so that those positions look unattractive?
So one of the things I will say on peak, so people hear peak and they think peak is a thing, right? It's a thing that's going to come down. The way I look at it, and in my interactions with many of the folks who have to implement this, it's kind of a process, right? There's been early movers in this process to change how we do some of our procedures. I anticipate there's going to be learning along the way, and there's going to be some feedback. And over time, right, I think it's going to look very different in its implementation than it looks up front. Part of that learning is to ensure that we don't go down the wrong path where we overtax or overburden people. That's where that feedback will come in. Okay, so when people sort of hear peak and there's going to be something imposed on us, you understand it's actually going to be a process. We are stage 3, I think. We're not stage 1, so others are going to learn before it comes to us. Apart from IT, I think IT is going to hit early in stage 1, and so you might get the cart a little bit ahead of the horse. Say we've got to stop this, we've got to stop this, we've got to stop this, or we got to push this, we got to push this, we got to push this. We are going to try certain things as a university, and we're going to learn. Right?
That learning curve at some of our peer institutions has not been so positive. Notably, one south of us and one east of us. And so the question that then arises is, where is the feedback? Because certainly faculty aren't hearing about it, and staff, at least within my unit, are not hearing about feedback mechanisms. So how do we provide feedback and guidance for what's coming?
And perhaps this is one, I know some of our staff have actually sat in and provided feedback to both the consultant and to the provost and to Myron, and we're going to do more on Tuesday. I don't know, Dave, if there's something you want to add to that, but there is feedback going on.
I think there's going to be a lot more feedback as the phase 1 and phase 2 implementations happen, which CSE is not in. Just over the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot more information come out from Central, so staff are now seeing a lot of information, and that's caused a lot of questions to come up. The Peak office has just on their website released a lot of frequently asked question updates based on hundreds of questions they got back in the town halls that they did over the last couple of weeks. So the information flow has picked up, and I think the answer to where does the feedback come that's meaningful is going to be in those early implementations.
Other questions? Paul.
So one thing I wonder about when I hear this presentation is, except for allusions to our new OVPR, which, and I've gotten these communications on the biosensing, et cetera, very little on what I'll call PROS initiatives or even communication from higher levels about where the university is going on fronts that aren't just COVID recovery. Can you comment on that?
So if I understand the question is, there has been more communication about COVID recovery from the president and the provost than there have been on initiatives. I might say the COVID recovery is somewhat substantive, Paul. Yes, yes. That was not easy. And if you listen to Mike Osterholm, we're not done yet. That has taken up a lot of their communication bandwidth over the last, even before I got here, and definitely the first 6 to 8 months. The types of things that one might hear in terms of bold new initiatives, if these are the things we're going to do, I think a lot of what at least I hear is how we're executing on certain things like that Impact 2025, right? Which was laid out well before. Are we tracking to that? And tracking to a plan that you put out as far as the leadership coming down is a very, very sort of valuable thing. It may not be super sexy, but making some of the benchmarks that you set, I think is actually very, very good from a leadership perspective. Some of the big wins that would be great to come would be things like a new chemistry building, right? That would be an awesome. Do you disagree with that one, Chuck, David? No, you're good with that. Okay. Some of those are not under their control, right? Just for the funding release. I believe that they have some of the, there's some constraints that they have that not able to go ahead and make announcements in terms of those types of investments. One of the things I think we could do, and if I, how would I put this? I want to focus on us, right? I want to focus on us, and we should be somewhat, reliant on ourselves for our success. I think we have it within ourselves to generate initiatives that are to our benefit, without necessarily. I mean, it'd be great if they do, but how do we go forward and not have to wait for them to do so? And let me give you an example. If you look at I mean, it's hockey season, it's basketball season, right? And you look at the ads that come out with some of the games that get played, right? These get broadcast Big Ten Network, and they get broadcast across the country. How do we make sure that CSE is front and center when some of those come out? At least an image. How do we get computer science? I want a picture of Mott's with, doing an algorithm with a bunch of decision trees, and have that be the opening montage that they show for the ad at halftime, right? Those are the things that I think we can control to get our message out about the wonderful things that we're doing that may not necessarily need the provost and the president to go ahead and dictate. So I would focus on us and making sure we're doing what we need to do. I will say that the provost has been remarkably supportive once you give her a plan. For example, hiring over 3 years, a 3-year hiring plan? We don't do it that way. Okay, here's why we're going to do it this way, and here's why the numbers make sense. Okay, Andrew, go ahead. I mean, it was less than 2 hours when we submitted the plan for her to say, yep, you got it, go forward. That's huge, because that gives us a level of flexibility at the hiring at the head. That's awesome. For them to say, hey, you have carte blanche to go ahead and grow, whereas before they used to be a little bit more hesitant. Once we actually show them some of the numbers, and McMaster now says, okay, yeah, I buy it. You can go ahead. That's huge. Those are the kinds of things that provide us with the opportunities now to self-actualize and realize some of the opportunities that we're talking about that don't necessarily need Joan or Rachel to stand up there and say, I believe. JD.
Joe, you mentioned in your talk about these really large initiatives that seem like they're NSF and NIH related, in terms of team science, like PRC, et cetera. What is being done to create opportunities like that with local or national companies? Large, I mean, like the the 9-figure.
Yeah, and I think we should be, oh, I thought online was getting them from the mics, but just in case. The question is, big stuff, NSF, NIH, wonderful. What about the big companies locally and nationally, and what we can do around bigger initiatives? I think there's three answers to that. One of them is we are absolutely looking to be broader than just NSF, NIH. You heard about some of the Department of Energy stuff that's coming on. We have been engaging with various units in the Department of Energy and in the Department of Defense to try to broaden the things we do, because even for people whose interest is entirely in civilian technologies and science, DoD funds amazing amounts of healthcare research, basic science research, and we want to get our mitts on all of it. As far as dealing with the large companies, that's part of the reason that on the one hand, we have university-wide moved from this idea of a foundation, corporate and foundations relations department that's about, when do companies want to give money and put their name on something, into a corporate engagement center that's much broader, that's out there building relationships and saying, how do we not just ask you for gifts, though we'll certainly keep doing that, how do we also serve as the place where you come to when you have research needs, and how do we serve as the place that you partner with when we can go together after large efforts that need us both. And that's the reason we have this position that I mentioned that we've just posted, is to bring somebody in, preferably somebody with substantial experience on the industry as contractor side, whether that's DoD, whether that's DOE or elsewhere, somebody who puts together these large deals that include the university in its role, companies in their role, small businesses in their role, and help us put together and be part of more of those deals as we go forward. We recognize most of us don't come out of grad school with training in how do you put together a coalition with 2 defense contractors, a priest and a minister. No, that's a different joke, but you get the idea. We need to bring in people who have the experience in that to help our faculty. And as we bring those people in, they're going to be reaching out to folks, first and foremost, to find out who's actually interested, what they're interested in doing, because it doesn't solve any problem for us if we bring in opportunities that nobody takes up. We need to be out there actively promoting the big opportunities that we actually have people who are ready to work on, because that's our best way of actually delivering and building the relationship for the next opportunity that comes forward. So that's the idea.
And I would add on to what Joe is saying too. It's in order to find some of those opportunities, there are some companies, single companies, that'll come and do a 9-figure gift. They tend to be rare. It doesn't mean that we're not going to go ahead and ask at some point in time. But just like you said, getting to whether it's the company that provides that 9 or somebody else, we will take all resources. It spends the same. Partnering with them to get access to those through another. That's exactly what he was talking about. And this partnerships, you've heard me do that spiel about sort of growth, partnerships, and impact. One of the things that Joe has been doing and will continue to do, working very hard to expand partnerships. Next week, we've got the Computational Sciences Division from Argonne showing up here. It's not just one person or two. There's 7 people that are coming, including the director of the division. Really trying to push forward, how do we engage? It's a contact sport. We need to get out there. And that's why the visibility, it ties in with all of that. So people understand what we're doing. So now when we go out and say, hey, why don't you come here? Why don't I come down and sit down with you? Yeah, I've heard about you. Fine. It's worth half an hour of my time or a day of my time to come up here. It's a long game on that, partnerships, but I think we have the talent to enable us to get there. David, and then David will be the last one.
So you mentioned trying new things and new initiatives, whether it's things like the student mental health initiatives or diversity recruitment and hiring, or things even off the walls like certificate programs for engaging non-traditional students in high schools. All of these things take a lot of faculty time and effort to kind of get into and try out. I'm just curious, is there anything we as a college can do to help newer faculty, particularly tenure tracks, or getting a research program going, and new careers to get involved in that activities? Because I feel like they have a lot of focus on other things.
Right. So if I understand correctly, the question is, how do we make sure that we utilize faculty time wisely and don't have them spend time on initiatives that would take them away from things that are not central or core to their overall success at the university and out in the field.
Enable them to try new things.
And enable them to try new things. Great question, and you know, I can let Ellen chime in on this as well too if she wishes. But the first thing I tell you is, you know, it's we're not going to mandate anything. There's not going to be like an initiative that says, okay, we're going to build a structure, and you know, you junior faculty member, you're going to work on it. When we say we're going to try things, these are ideas that come in. And usually if somebody comes in with the idea, okay, what would it take? What do you need to get that done? A big part of it will be the mentorship of the person in their department to say, is this really the right thing for you to be doing right now? And in some cases it might be. I'd be loath to say, you know, you're doing great, you're an outstanding researcher. I want you to go ahead and now add 20 hours a week to do this thing that we came up with at the college. I don't think that'd be a good thing. It would be something that this is core to what I'm doing. Maybe it's experiential learning, and maybe that's part of my overall contribution to the educational mission and the research mission. Maybe I'm doing research and experiential learning. What can we do to generate a new program here that will let me understand this better joint with the College of Education? Sure, that sounds great. What do you need? Give me a plan. That's kind of sort of how we're going to do it. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add, Ellen.
I agree with what you've just said, and what's most important for the younger faculty is that they succeed in the first few years in, as you mentioned, if they are tenure track faculty, building up their research record and program which will be foreseen to move in a positive slope further into the future, and demonstrating that they're effective teachers. I would say we don't want to burden younger faculty. We don't want to burden anyone with what seems like busy work or something that's going to take an inordinate amount of their time. But we want to provide opportunities to let people do what they want. And I had one more thought, and now I've forgotten it. Yeah, well, you heard about this new faculty development initiative. But I guess I think that the other thing that we try to do, and I think we do pretty well, is we provide annual feedback to all our younger faculty. That doesn't happen at all universities, and I think it's really important.
Thank you, and I think we've kept you all here long enough. There are refreshments outside. Thanks very much for your time, interest, and very good questions. And with that, I will say good afternoon.